The question comes up quite often where someone has bought a piece of land and now they want to do something with that land. They want to have an expert look at it and tell them what to do. I'm going to share with you some of the approaches that you can take and how to get results from your land, because we're really about maximizing utility value of land while remaining ecologically sound. And so if you've bought a piece of land or you're thinking about buying a piece of land, I think I could save you a lot of time and effort when it comes to professional advice. I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead. So first off, there's an unlimited supply of federal organizations, state organizations, experts in the area of native habitat management or permaculture design or regenerative agriculture that will offer you advice for your land. Now, they're going to record podcasts and do videos, and they're going to have membership sites like I've got. They're going to have all kinds of resources. And so it's easy to become overwhelmed by the opportunity that you have, whether you own land today or you're seeking to buy land. When you first purchase your land, you are already behind the eight ball when it comes to maximizing value of that land. So the first thing we want to do is we want to have a general idea of where your land is going to be, and then what is the habitat in that particular area. So climate's important. Are you in a temperate climate? What's your rainfall? You also want to understand what skills you have. Now, if you've already bought land, you're not that far behind. We can help you catch up quickly. That's the purpose of this podcast. But if you're guessing about what you want to do and you've just got general ideas, it's better to capture all that on paper than it is to buy a piece of land that might have a lot of work to go into it before it gets to what you believe to be ideal. In fact, once you've bought land, it's best to live on that land before you get started, or to interact with that land before you get started, because once you start putting in foundations and you're getting permits, you could run down a rabbit hole that's going to cost you tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and produce something that you may not be satisfied with. So let's ask why we buy land first. In the approach that we have here at Prosperity Homestead, we buy land as real estate investors. Okay? So if you're buying rural land for farming, if a piece of land comes up that is typical for farming, maybe it already has farming on it, maybe it has farm leases, you may buy that land as an investment asset and lease it out to somebody else to farm. And then all these improvements that you're going to do are like from a landlord's perspective. You might buy a piece of land that you're going to retire to in the future. So you currently live in the city, you work in the city, you like to visit the country, and you're going to buy a piece of land that you will retire to in the future. You don't know what your needs are in the future. So building too much on that land may not serve your interests in the short term. But once you have that land, you have the Department of Forestry come out, you have conservation biologists come out, and you start looking at that land's opportunity. How does that land express itself? And then start looking at where could you be in that land. Because here's the thing. If you buy a piece of land and you fix the roads and you fix the water and maybe you get basic electricity out there to a barn or something like that, and that land doesn't turn out to be perfect for you, then you haven't spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on buildings and infrastructure, and you could easily recover and sometimes even profit from that land because you've set it up for somebody else. Now, that happens very often in my area. Somebody will buy a piece of land and they'll split it up into a bunch of different pieces, and they're going to put a well, and they're going to put electric, and they're going to have a lot ready to build on. And so that works well if you're near a city. It's not necessarily what I recommend, because I want big pieces of land. I want miles of trails. I want conservation areas. I want regenerative agriculture. So again, you have to look at what is it that you want. What are the outcomes you're looking? If you're going to dump your retirement account into a piece of land and then build a house on it, you better hope that land is exactly what you need. So that's why we talk about getting a piece of land and developing it for hunting, getting a piece of land and develop it for weekend camping. You could send in we have a lot of videos about forestry mulching. You could send in a forest mulcher on existing roadways to open up a piece of land to make it great for mountain biking, hunting, hiking, family camping, and never at all spend $20,000 to $30,000 on a well, spend $15,000 to $20,000 on power, spend $100,000 on putting a building out there. You can use that money to buy the piece of land next door and build your farming empire. Do you see how this works? But again, you've bought the piece of land. The Department of Forestry will come out and they'll help you with a plan, because it is possible that land has valuable trees on it. It's possible the land's degraded in a way that they might have a program to help you with erosion. They may be able to tell you things about that land you never thought to know. And they're going to give you a written report. The conservation biologist I had come out to my property pointed out some native grasses that were in the seed bank, and they some ideas for widening the trails to stimulate those native grasses. Also some things to get a better surplus of nuts from the oak trees. And so those two things, as far as raising goats and raising pigs. Now, they did pitch me on quail quite a few times, and I think quail's interesting, but I'm not going to be in a situation to have enough habitat for quail that I want to transition what I want to do. But again, I never thought of quail. I had thought about pigeons, I had thought about chickens, I had thought about ducks. But again, these ideas are going to come. There's going to be a lot of ideas. Now, if you want to hire an expert, because it doesn't cost anything for the Department of Forestry to come out, you've already paid for that. It doesn't cost anything for a conservation biologist to come out. Again, you've already paid for that. Those are going to be available through universities. They're going to be available through different programs through an extension office. Now, they're going to give you a recommendation and a plan. It doesn't mean you have to use that plan. If you're going to hire experts from that point, you want to bridge their recommendations to your outcomes and desires for the property by developing a design plan. So we have written design plans for every property we manage, every property we caretake. There's a written plan about what are the expectations of the land, how does the land express itself, and then from a mapping standpoint, where do certain activities happen? Where does the market garden exist, and how is the market garden laid out? If you go over to the videos I did on the Sustainable Homestead Institute, where we designed a market garden, we show the evolution of a market garden. And we show how he went from the Virginia's largest hugelkultur to mounded raised beds, double-reached raised beds, and we're now in a position of having large terraces, which is extended amount of the square footage. We got a lot of the aggressive trees like the honey locust out. It doesn't have to be finished when you start. The idea can be up there, but the written design plan helps us navigate the unlimited supply of options. And sometimes when you're watching these YouTube videos and you're coming up with all these options, the design plan also helps you start to identify areas of implementation. Now, we hire experts to help us with the implementation. So I've hired laborers, I've hired excavators, I've hired forest mulchers, I've hired people with a lot of equipment, because I knew that if I got the equipment in up front, I can open up the opportunities to do these other things. But there have been times that we've started with just hiking trails. The key is the implementation has more value than the ideas. Because day one, on any piece of land, I can show you how to start getting value out of it. So you buy a piece of hunting land, and day one, hunting season opens. You're ready to go. What are the 5 things we're going to do before hunting season? If you have a piece of land that's degraded, day one, what are we going to do? We're going to start removing the trash. The removal of the trash has more value than having 5 more experts come through and tell you to remove the trash. And the trash could be invasive species of plants. The trash could be left over from previous farming activities. Again, the implementation is more valuable than the ideas. The restoration of the land, what does it mean to restore a piece of land? I get notes where people will say, I have acreage backing up to this, and it's currently being farmed for trees. I'd like to restore the land. Well, tree farm is a form of agriculture that can actually help land if done properly. So the question ought to be is, how do we continue a sustainable forestry practice? And of course, the Department of Forestry will help you with a plan on that. They'll also come in and tell you to spray and pray. You can instead, in the implementation, use other methods, which could be goats under trees, hogs under trees. It could be cows under trees. It Could be a silvopasture system rather than polyculture forestry system. Your trees might be mature. It's time to take the trees out. So rather than taking them out and then figuring out what to do afterwards, you can kind of come up with that future-paced plan. Again, that's what a design plan does. What are we doing now? What are we doing in the future? And then in the implementation, we can start rolling out our projects. Now, again, a lot of folks are more creative than I am, and they want to experience the land. They want to have those dramas. I'm a really cut and dry kind of guy. I want to have completed projects and enjoyment rather than drama. So I want to be able to, for example, the project that we're working on right now, we're dropping 3 buildings in a temporary location, and then we're going to finish the buildings off. And then if they move to a more permanent location, depending on land acquisition, depending on availability, depending on what's happening on the land, then that's fine. But where they're getting dropped, they can sit as off-grid cabins until we're ready to use them for something else. We're setting up camps rather than setting up permanent foundations because, again, our methodology for raising these animals is going to be very hands-on for the first couple of years because I'm still learning the different methods. We have temporary fencing, which is not always secure for keeping animals in. And then ultimately, as we get to permanent fencing, we can be a little bit more hands-off. So literally, in the nomadic caretaking program that we're putting together, I will literally be sleeping in a tent near where the animals are located. Okay? Because I'll be able to maintain and monitor much better that way. Plus, it's going to be fun. You know, even if it's just over the weekend, it's going to be fun. I'll get up in the morning. Think about this. When you get a piece of property or you're thinking about your piece of property, I want you to sit back sometimes with your significant other, with your kids, and say, hey, look, I'm thinking about getting a piece of land. What would life be like when we have this land? You know, do you want to wake up, roll out of a tent, have a cup of coffee, and then go hunting while it's still dark outside? Or do you want to roll out of the tent in the middle of the day because you've been sleeping in and then have a nice relaxing little campfire as you have some food and family and friends? Again, Department of Forestry is not going to help you with that. Conservation biologists are not going to help you with that. The extension offices are not going to help you with that. They're going to give you their approach to how your land should function, but it's your land. And so we look at it from a real estate investment perspective. We look at it from a existing land use and utility perspective. We look at it from how can we increase the property's value. See, if day one you go in on a piece of land that costs you $100,000 and you do $50,000 worth of work, and now the land's worth $300,000 because before it had repairs and it had problems and it didn't have a well, and you've just transformed this land, that has as much value as the perfect homestead or food security or financial freedom because you've just ramped up the value of that land. Now we decide, starting small, where do we want to go from there? So it's okay to have to drive out to your piece of land and only be able to be out there on the weekend. I know I beat myself up sometimes because my stuff seems to be taking longer than it needs to. Client stuff works pretty smooth and happens consistently. But again, your dream of homesteading needs to be reality, not a nightmare. It needs to be reality, not drama. And so instead of watching all these YouTube videos, we come up with a lot of inputs, put it into a design plan, and then implement that design plan through a phase or project-based approach. So in my case, I'm going to start with just goats. It might be 2 goats inside of a temporary fence, and I'll move them like I was moving a herd of 30. But ultimately, we're bonding the goats to the activity and to training them to the fences. And if I can't do that with 2 goats, how in the hell am I going to do it with 30 goats? Do you see what we're talking about here? You might have a piece of land and you might want to restore land, but if you've never defined what restoration is in the context of your ownership of the land, as your context of your stewardship of the land, as your context of the skill set on the land, then people like me will be buying your land after you've been an absentee owner for 20 years and you still don't know what to do with it. And I'm going to buy it for pennies on the dollar, and then I'm going to transform it, and then you can come visit, which is fine. You know, we manage properties that people own and they come and enjoy the property rather than have to go through the struggle of building the property. But my point being is, where do you want to be on the spectrum? So land as an investment, land as farming and expanding regional food, farming or homesteading as personal food security or personal physical security. There's so many aspects. So if you're ready with your land, you don't have to actually own land or anything, but you just want to sit down with somebody to bring up some satellite maps, to talk about some ideas and concepts. I do have a permaculture design certification. I'm a Virginia Master Naturalist. I'm part of these native habitat managers groups, and I manage habitat as part of what I'm doing. I have materials on the website I can share with you. If you'd like to sit down and just do a discovery call to find out what the next step is, because what I've hoped to share with you right now is that's how you do it. You get these agencies out, then you start a design plan, and then you figure out what projects you're going to work on because it's enjoyable. And then from there, where do we go? Where do we go? How do we get you so that you're living the dream instead of a nightmare, and that you're learning fast and implementing more of what you already know, and having those family relationships, and having those family experiences, and having this be everything you thought it would be. Now, I can guarantee to you that it's not always going to be everything you thought it to be, because you don't know what you don't know. And so I can share my experience. I can connect you with other experts to share their experiences, but ultimately focus those expertise. If you're paying for experts, focus them on implementation and design plans, because it is very easy to get overwhelmed with what all the experts have to say. What are their opinions? What could be done? The potential is unlimited. But what actually we're going to do on your property so that you get the results that you're looking for, that you build the asset value of that land, you build the cash flow value of that land, you build the ecological and conservation value of that land, that's where you need to focus. I want to thank you for listening. I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead, where we help you get the most from your land in an ecologically sound and holistic way. We help you generate more value from that land, which very often is biological diversity, especially food crops, especially material crops, but ultimately family and relationship crops, community crops. If you have questions about what I've covered today, visit us at www.prosperityhomestead.org. You can ask your questions by simply going to the contact page and filling out a simple form, and we'll answer those questions in the membership. I'll answer them direct. We'll answer them on podcast. But if you'd like to support the site and get access to more valuable content, more of what we've shared here in detail, then join us when you're on that site. The membership is nominal, and it unlocks access to a lot of the members-only content and courses. Again, I want to thank you for listening and being a part of what we do here. Keep sending in the questions. I'm Justin Hitt from Prosperity Homestead, and this has been about what to do with your land. There's so many ideas. Let's get a plan. Let's get some projects together, and let's get results. I'd love to hear your success stories, and I'll see you in the next one.